Yesterday we talked about the 6 enemies, so now we will talk how to overcome them. Yesterday we were discussing about the 6 enemies. They are lust, anger, greed, illusion, pride, and envy. And we also discussed how they gradually develop. From lust, anger develops. From anger, greed develops. Greed will confuse our intelligence, and then illusion develops. If we are in illusion, then pride is possible, and everything culminates in envy. And envy, inside envy, all the other 5 are there. Inside pride, all the other 4 are there, and so on. And we also discussed that how these enemies, they're so to say hijacking our consciousness, our whole life, and our whole psychology. And that we, so to say, we lose our independence towards these enemies. If somebody is angry, he doesn't know anymore what he does, and he does things he actually doesn't want, or that he would not do in a sane state. If somebody is completely illusioned, he would do and say things he would never do if the illusion is not there. So if pride is there, we will start to act in a very funny way, and even if we contemplate later on about us, about our actions, we think, oh, why I acted so stupidly. And this is all, we are all dragged by these enemies, and we are no more lord over the situation, but these enemies, they force us to do things. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he suggests that we should cut it from the beginning. If pride has already developed, to then fight against the pride is very hard. If anger is already developed, to then suppress the anger and fight against the anger is very hard. So therefore, we should understand how these things develop, and from there we should try to subdue the enemies. And they develop, the Bhagavad Gita says, in Sanskrit it is said, Dhyayato Vishayan Pungsa. This means that Sangat Tejupajayate, Sangat Sanjayate Kama. So anyway, what this means that where is our focus, where is our dhyana, in Sanskrit it is called dhyana, our focus, our meditation, there we will develop an attachment, sangat, and this attachment turns to lust, turns to desire. So this karma, this desire is coming from an attachment, and that comes from where we put our focus, where we put our consciousness in. So in other words, we can say also how we are feeding our mind, how we are feeding our psychology, how we are feeding our consciousness, accordingly we will get the results, and accordingly these things develop or don't develop. So instead, what our Vedic spirituality suggests, instead of suppressing the anger, instead of fighting against pride, instead of fighting against illusion and envy, we just change the food of the mind. We just change the way we feed our consciousness. And that would mean, instead of feeding it with material thoughts and material ambitions, material desires, giving attention to material development, we feed the mind with spiritual topics, with spirituality. And therefore, there's an arrangement in the Vedic culture that there are so many topics that are discussed. The Sanskrit literature is very vast, and besides the 4 Vedas, there are 18 Puranas full of different stories, and and these stories are always discussed by the saintly persons. So, and these discussions, these these topics, different stories and discussion our different topics, this is like the food for the soul, which strengthens the soul and weakens these 6 enemies. And in our line, our main Purana we are referring to and we are reading and discussing is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So therefore, our spiritual master was asked, how is it possible we can overcome this lust or these enemies? And he said, if you daily listen Srimad Bhagavatam, it will be cut. So, and that is the very deep reason is there, or this is a very deep, because that means that we are shifting our attention from the material to the spiritual through the medium of listening spiritual topics given by the Shastras and presented by saintly persons. And in this listening process, our mind is fed positively so that all these negative things, these 6 enemies, will not develop. Or if they are there, they will reduce and lose their strength, and we will become freer and freer and freer. Therefore, the remedy suggested by the Vedic spirituality for these enemies who hijack our life and hijack our consciousness and pull us down is to listen regularly from the Vedic scriptures, from the different topics that are discussed therein, the different stories that are told therein, and to listen these topics from saintly persons. And that is the most powerful tool that will help us to free ourselves from the 6 enemies and to strengthen ourselves, our soul, and our consciousness. Thank you very much for listening, and see you in the next video.
पिबतो भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुका।